Welcome to our uh, monthly Crescent Village Neighbors meeting. And we are very privileged to have Sara Steele join us. I'm going to read what's on the flyer because I think that pretty much sums up Sara's background. Sara is an internationally acclaimed artist. Her work has been in over 80 solo exhibits in galleries and museums in the US and Europe. Her paintings have also been in over 100 juried and invitational shows, as well as published in numerous formats since 1979. That's older than most of us. Many neighbors are familiar with her annual calendar, now in its 43rd year, and her calendar graces many of the walls of our neighbors here. Sara is also the third generation of her family to grow up and live in the same house on Cresheim Road. She has a broad perspective of this neighborhood and has seen a lifetime of changes. We are truly privileged to have Sara speak not only about her art, but also share her views about this community from her unique vantage point. And what I'm going to do is ask everybody to mute yourselves. And if you don't, I will voluntarily mute you. So please mute yourselves. And then when we have a Q&A, we could open up then. So Sara, I'm going to put you on speaker view. That looks like art to me. And that looks like Bonnie to me. All right.
Okay. I can see everybody. I've got gallery view, so that's fine. Are we going to have an echo here? Is that going to happen too? I hope not. I hope not. Anyway, okay, now that he's got the lies out of the way, I'll just give you a little bit more data that might be accurate. I'll start with the house because it's easier. My grandparents bought this house that I now live in the 1930s. They did a lot of wonderful renovations to it in the 40s. My parents bought it from them in 59 and did renovations that at the time were very, I don't know, they were considered modern. They turned out to be really a bad idea, like louvered windows and hollow core doors. So, anyway, we all grew up here. My aunt and my mother went to Houston. The three of us grew up here. We all went to Houston, survived, got a decent education. The house, after we dispersed, the kids all went away and my mother moved to England, the house just kind of fell into disrepair. And when it was going to go on the market, I always wanted it. I always wanted to live here. So I had it inspected and to find out, was it structurally sound and what did it need? And the inspector said, yes, it is, and everything. So I put in a standing bid for what I thought it was worth. It was priced way higher than that. And there were no offers and it just sat on the market. So I was finally able to buy it at the last second. I bought it at the tail end of 1991. I've been renovating it ever since. So that's basically the house. And a lot of you see me doing my various renovations or things of it. Excuse me, I get hoarse when I talk, so I'm just going to drink. Okay. Anyway, so that's the house. When I was growing up here on this street, there were gobs and gobs and gobs of kids. We had a huge gang of kids, and we didn't lock doors in those days. We went in and out of people's houses and in and out of their refrigerators. And we mostly would get home from school, change our clothes, and go up to what we called the vacant lot, which is beside the train tracks up off of Cresheim, or the woods. And we would just disappear until dinner time. and we just had to be back by dinner. That was the rule. And that was it. And we spent our lives doing that. We just lived in the woods, playing games, playing outside. It was a big gang of kids. And I actually am still friends with some of them. And one of them, Liz Hirsch, still lives in her house at the corner of Cresheim and Durham. We're the two, I guess, anchors of the old days. When I was growing up, I guess that the 60s, it was the 60s. The neighborhood was at a really interesting time. A lot of the neighbors had gotten together. They formed Westman Airy Neighbors. Shirley Melvin and Doris Polsky formed Twin Realty. Another group of people formed Hamilton Bank, and they were fighting redlining, and they wanted to make Mount Airy a stable neighborhood. And West Mount Airy Neighbors was really active at that point. I think there were probably about 2,500 members. It was much bigger than it is now. And my mother became the executive director, and the office was in our dining room here. And this was before, well, I guess we got an electric typewriter at one point, and that was big news. But we had a mimeograph machine, and we didn't have answering machines. We didn't have computers. It was really, really basic. So I learned the basics of community organizing by doing it, taking messages and giving people information about where to go, who to call in the city, or just giving people numbers and call the zoning board or do this or do that. Here's your, city council person's office. Anyway, and typing letters. I learned how to type a real formal letter that way. Doing the newsletters, running them off on the mimeograph machine. We'd spread all the papers around the dining room table, and then we would just walk around and collate them and staple them and fold them and put them through the stamping machine, and then sort them into zip codes and do a bulk mailing. That served me very well when I started my first business, because in those days, before the internet, I had a mail order catalog. So I'm going to back up a little bit. I took art in high school mostly because I didn't want to take another course. And so I signed up for this art class, and I ended up with this amazing teacher, a real artist, who nailed me. She just nailed me. And she was horrible. And she was about this big, and she was like a Mexican jumping bean and full of energy. And she basically, and I didn't realize it until much later, she decided who in the class were likely to be artists. And everybody else, if they tried and did their work, they got a B. And the artists, she just tortured. She tortured us. We had to turn in a sketchbook at the end of every semester. And I was used to being an A student, I was spoiled. And I turned in my first sketchbook, and she gave me a D-. And I had the nerve to go to her and say, what? What? You're giving me an what? And she just looked at me like, yeah, I am. And I didn't get an A- until the very end of the year. After that year with her, I signed up for good with her and didn't get her. So I dropped out of high school because I hated girls' high, just hated it. And I made my own program, did what I wanted, really got into some very interesting studies, worked at the National Park Service with the curators. I got to do all kinds of interesting stuff. And then I decided I really did want to be an artist, even though I knew basically nothing. So I started doing freelance work and teaching myself how to paint. I'd go to the art museum and whatever. And so I got a freelance job for a nonprofit, because I was always involved with nonprofits. Y'all already know that, right? It's called Women's Resources. And I was doing little jobs for them, brochures and stuff. And I was really, I wouldn't say arrogant, but I really believed in my talent at that point in a way that only young people can when they know nothing. And I knew nothing. nothing. And I was bad. I was really bad. Anyway, I didn't know that. I thought I was great. I wanted to promote my work. They needed their work promoted, their name promoted. So I said, look, I'll design a poster with your name and my artwork. We'll split the cost. We'll sell it. So we did. And I wanted it to be affordable for everybody so that they could have great art, no matter how much they could afford. I really was like, I did recover from that, but took a while. Anyway, the poster, it was magic. It was just luck. It was dumb luck. And somebody in Macy's in New York saw it, bought out the run. It ended up getting reprinted 3 times. It led to another poster and then another poster and then another poster. And it just kind of took off. And I had always really resented the idea that wall calendars were either dead male artists or the hardware store or the gas station. So I decided I was going to create a calendar, and I did for Women's Resources. This was my baby calendar. This was my first calendar in 1981. What's interesting to me when I look at it now, and actually I'll show you, this was the kind of work I was doing then. I was actually teaching myself how to do watercolor. And so I was doing line drawings, and then I was practicing like a limited palette and mixing color in these different areas. But what interests me about looking at this now is that the piece on the cover is extremely abstract. And I've always considered myself an abstract painter. And there are a couple other pieces in here. This one, that's also very abstract. Anyway, and also this was multilingual, which in those days was a weird thing too. You can see that. Anyway, I just decided, you know, Sierra Club was good, but I wanted my own. So that's what I did. And I'm still doing it. I have no idea why. This is 43 years now. And every year recently, I've said, this is it. This is the last one. I can't do anymore. And then somebody, you have to do it, you know. So I don't know. This may be the last one. I don't know. Anyway, the calendar turned out to be not particularly profitable, but a really expensive PR piece. And it got me into all of these opportunities that I never would have expected. Opportunities to exhibit. People from all over the country were contacting me to buy work. This piece actually lives in England, which, I mean, that's 1980, right? Anyway, so I just started showing and learning about exhibiting and learning about production and publishing and everything I could get my hands on, in addition to learning how to paint. And after about, I would say about 20 years, I started to be a reasonably good painter. That's my opinion. I started to know what I was doing. Let me put it that way. And, you know, now, I mean, Lucretia's probably laughing when I say this, but, you know, now young artists will contact me and they'll say, oh, you know, I want to be a painter and I want to do this. And, you know, I want to paint like you and blah, 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 blah. And I say, okay, well, here's what you need to do for the first 20 years. And that's like end of the phone call. Just fine with me. Go away and practice a while. Anyway, so the work has taken me really all over. It took me to Hawaii to paint. It took me to do an amazing exhibit in Spain, in one of the Spanish, you know, the Casa de Cultura. The Spaniards have these wonderful, this was in the monasterio in Escorial, which was what, Prince Philip's castle and monastery. I got to go to China as a part of an arts delegation. And so we exhibited our work in China. Anyway, it's just really, I mean, it's literally taken me all over this country and to different parts of the world. And, you know, who would have guessed? I mean, I thought I was going to go to medical school. That didn't happen. You know, still interested in anatomy, but Anyway, what else can I tell you? Oh, well, in 1994, a curator in California did a book of my work. And then in 2005, I had a retrospective at the Berman Museum up at Ursinus College. And that was kind of eye-opening to me because I get bored easily. So I do not paint the same thing over and over again. A lot of artists do iterations of the same thing, and it never really worked for me. And so I always thought that I didn't really have a style. And this was an 80-piece show. And when I walked into it the first night, this huge, beautiful room, there was a piece that I had done when I was 15 or 16, all the way to the present. And I got to see this arc of my work across time. You know, I guess it was 40 some years because I was 50 years old. And it was like, oh, it is a cohesive body of work. What do you know? My publisher at the time published a book. I was really lucky. This is it's a serious monograph with essays and coffee table kind of book, lots of color pictures. That was really an honor. I'll just go back for a second into the business side of stuff because that's so weird, and then I'll jump back to art and stay away from business. After getting screwed a number of times in my very young years with the first couple calendars, I decided I can do all this myself. I'll just start my own company, which I did. And it grew, and I started a mail order catalog and blah, 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 blah. And it got too big too fast. I didn't know how to run a business. So I ended up selling it to my biggest distributor. Then that didn't work. I started another business, sold that. I really wanted to paint. I didn't really want to run a business. That's not what I love doing. I don't think I'm a particularly good business person. So I started licensing my work, and my work has been licensed on hundreds and hundreds of products. I mean, cards at Trader Joe's and Lenox China, and really all over the place on lots of things. But as the internet took over, things really, really changed a lot. So anyway, sales changed, customer bases changed, everything changed. So a couple of years ago, I took back my calendar from my publisher at the time, and who knows how long I'll be doing it? Who knows if somebody else will license it? It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to produce and to market and sell and ship and all of that, and still have time to paint. And, you know, as I get older, really what I want to do is paint. You know, if I have 10 or 15 or 25 years left, I don't want to spend it packing boxes of calendars. I really, really don't. So I don't know how much longer this will go on. Anyway, I think, well, you know, at this point, most of my painting is pretty abstract. Most people still think all I paint is orchids. That stopped a long time ago. I think what I'd like to do, because I could just natter on and tell stories that are kind of weird and probably boring, is just to open it up to a Q&A. I think do you know where the reactions button is down at the bottom of your screen? You can put your hand up there, and then I can ask you to unmute so we're not all talking over one another. So please fire away. Yeah, Steve. You got to unmute or we can't hear you.
Oh, yes, yes. How have you seen your art change over the years in terms of both color and also subject?
Well, my work has always been largely nature-based when I'm looking out, and it's been emotionally based when I'm looking in. I'm absolutely a colorist, you know, an expressionist. Color is really my primary interest. And I borrow forms to do what I want to do with color. And I want to do everything with color. In terms of, I'm not good with time, But I would say, after, I don't know, well, I started painting more landscapes than florals and really got interested in the abstract qualities of landscapes. And I also was getting interested in the challenges of painting at larger and larger scales. So, I mean, I'm in my studio right now on a table that I built to do a watercolor that was 9 feet wide. And if you do watercolor at all, you know that 9 feet is kind of tricky. It's a little big for that medium. But I really like to stretch. I really like to always be challenged. The work that I'm doing now is largely improvisational. It's really jazz based and non-representational at all. And I like to be in a dialogue with the paper and the paint and just see what emerges. It's really a conversation, and I'm not the only conversant. So that's part of how it's changed. That's a lot of how it's changed.
I should say too, for those people who don't know, that there's a mural on the corner of Mount Airy and Germantown Avenue on the second floor, where PJ McManaman was gracious enough to allow for that space to be used as a mural. And I asked Sara to paint it. So we have her art, I think, larger than 9 feet, Sara.
That was so terrifying. I think I had just come back from China. Yeah. I'm not sure. Anyway, and it was November. It was freezing, and it's the second and third stories. So I had to go up in a cherry picker, and I'm afraid of heights. And it was so cold and so terrifying. And the cobblestones are not level. So that cherry picker was like waving in the wind and rocking back and forth. And yeah, it has color shifted a lot in all those years. I guess it's maybe 2005, 2006, something like that. It's color shifted a lot at this point.
So it was the first mural to, you could say, building mural in Mount Airy. And I was very proud that you could do it, and that it could be visible all over the avenue, because it's sort of a hexagonal kind of structure there.
Yeah, it wraps around 3 sides of the building.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun after the fact. Hey, Lucretia. Right. Oh, let's see. Actually, I think Margaret was ahead of you. So Margaret, why don't you unmute yourself?
Okay. I think I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yes. Well, my question is, how have you seen the neighborhood change over the years? I mean, I got some information about how it was way back then. How have you seen it change, especially in the last 20 years or 30 years? What good parts have you seen change, and what parts do you are sad to see that changed?
Yeah. Well, we worked really hard on the train station over the years, and that's been great. I mean, I remember we did a print to raise money for it, and Allison Schwartz was, very helpful getting it redone. And I think one of the things that I've seen change a lot that's, tough to watch is gentrification. When we were growing up, these big houses, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom houses, were families full of children. And now families full of children can't afford to live in these houses. They can't afford to buy them. And even when I bought my house, these houses were still affordable. So that's a problem. The schools, of course, have changed a lot. When we were growing up, the schools were really, they were good schools. They were great schools, actually. They were extremely well integrated. The parents were in the schools a lot. Some of that had to do with the fact that not all mothers worked in those days, but there was a lot of engagement with the community and the parents actually inside the classrooms as well. And that's really changed. Over the years, I've seen a lot of young parents who move here, and then they either are working, 2 jobs to be able to send their kids to private school, or their kids turn 5 and they move across they move across Stanton Avenue so they can get in, or to Ballackinwood. And I think that's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. I think everybody would get a better education if everybody went to public school. But, that's just one person's opinion. Anyway, I've seen that. I've seen Weaver's Way. There were several co-ops that preceded Weaver's Way. I just found out Weaver's Way is like 50 years old. It's amazing to me. And I'm an original member, which really says something. But that was just, it was a storefront. It was minuscule, and we all just worked. And now it's this like grocery store, and you don't have to be a member. Anybody can shop there. And that's been a big change. West Main Airy Neighbors kind of went downhill. It seems like it's starting to revive a little bit again. Town watches have, come and gone, been more or less active over time. I'm interested in the fact that a lot of neighbors who I grew up with still live here. Like, people do stay here, which I really appreciate. I like that. And when I decided to buy my house, I was actually thinking about moving out west. And the reason that I decided to stay was because I feel safe here. And, I can walk for literally miles, in any direction, and usually see people that I know, run into people that I'm at least familiar with by seeing on the street. And that's a really incredible thing. I remember, this is a long time ago. I think I was in my early 20s. I was renting an apartment down on Upsall Street, and there had been an Inquirer strike. And I found out the strike was over. So I was going out to buy a newspaper. It was 7:30 in the morning. And I was heading toward the newspaper, and somebody like grabbed me from behind, wrapped a hose around my neck, dragged me into an alley. I'm pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think this guy was expecting what he got, but I basically said, "Get that off my neck. What are you trying to do to me? I haven't even had my coffee yet. I just came out to get my newspaper." And I said, "Just come on, let's just walk so I can get my newspaper, and then we can discuss this afterwards." I think he was just in shock, So I started walking more toward a part of the neighborhood where I knew people, or I at least knew, sort of knew people. And I got to a block where I knew somebody that I knew lived. I figured her door would be unlocked. And I just made a beeline and went into her house and locked the door and called the cops. But so when I say feel safe, I mean, that's not an exaggeration. Like, I really do feel, and that kind of thing doesn't happen all the time. I mean, that's never happened to me again in my life, but it was really indicative to me of what a community can be like. Sort of the elasticity of a real community. I hope that is an answer that you.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, you stressed the idea that it still feels like a community. It was a community.
Absolutely.
And that's really amazing after all the changes, demographic changes that have taken place, and even the fact that it's really almost not affordable for a middle income person to buy into Mount Airy, but yet
I couldn't buy here now. No.
Yeah, so it seems like we're still attracting people who want to tap into that sense of community and living in an urban environment that has a lot to offer. So that's encouraging.
Yeah. And I think that really kind of before it was common, we had a real broad range, racially, in terms of gender. There were so many different kinds of people here, people adopting kids from all over the world. It was really almost more like, a center city neighborhood in some ways. it certainly wasn't Chestnut Hill. It was so distinct. That's one more change that I'll mention. When I was growing up, Mount Airy, Germantown Avenue was not really much of anything in Mount Airy. There was not very much happening here. And I watched, Chestnut Hill kind of disintegrate as it got, unfortunately, consumed by, a real estate magnate. And at the same time, Mount Airy has just really evolved into this very lively business district. So it's wonderful. And, the people that hung on, Roth Flores and PJ, and it's just great that it's the way it is now, I mean, but Sedgwick Theater, when I was growing up, one of the mothers in the neighborhood used to send all of the kids. She would gather us all at noon on Saturday. She would give each one of us a quarter and a dime and send us to the Sedgwick Theater. So we had the quarter was for the movies, the dime was for the popcorn. And it wasn't until years later that I figured out that was how she got peace and quiet on Saturday. Okay, Lucretia, sorry about that.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes. Well, first of all, it's lovely to see you, Sarah. It's been a long time. Is there any chance you could hold up or show us one of your latest works?
I actually can't. And the reason is I've been
They're too large, or
I'm in the midst of redoing my studio. And so all my work is out of the room right this minute because I've been painting and plastering, and I'd have to go pretty far to grab a piece. I think what I can show you is there's a new-ish piece. It's not really new.
In the calendar.
In the calendar this year, it's this is a detail of it. It's not the whole thing.
Oh, beautiful.
And the actual piece is square. And it's a painting of an acupuncture treatment that I had.
Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Yes.
Don't you sorry about that. Also, the new pieces are really large, and it would be very hard to get back far enough to show you.
And well, thank you very much. Don't you love a square format?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. So everybody's done. We can go now. Nobody, huh? You're all chicken. Well,
Sarah, would you like
the art? How's this? This is Stan.
Okay.
Stan, hi.
Stan, hold on for 1 second, Sarah.
Okay.
You like me to put your email address in the chat?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
All righty.
I'm sorry, Stan, what were you gonna?
Well, I don't know how to make this question any more specific than what you're going to hear, which is, how would you say the art scene in Philadelphia and our neighborhood has changed, evolved over the years?
Well, I'll confess that because I'm self-taught, and because Philadelphia has the Academy of Fine Arts, which is the oldest fine art institution in the country, and University of the Arts, which in the old days was PCA, and Tyler, and I did not go to school. I was very illegitimate in the Philadelphia art scene. I just never could get picked up in the Philly art scene. And so I kind of gave up and I just went elsewhere. I couldn't get picked up by the kind of gallery that I would want to. So I tended to exhibit in alternative spaces, or wherever I could, and then just go out of Philly, go to other parts of the country where it didn't matter quite so much. I ended up being on the board of the women's sport at PATHA by a strange quirk of fate, which cracked me up, but they weren't interested in me as an artist. So
do those alternate spaces still exist in Philly?
Oh yeah, I think there's a huge art scene in Philly now. A lot of galleries, a lot of alternative spaces, a lot of young artists doing all kinds of creative things. I think, well, certainly COVID the last couple of years has changed tremendous amount. But first of all, as I started doing larger and larger work, it just got harder and harder, more expensive to frame and harder to schlep around. And it really just takes a toll, on my body, or, having to rent a truck and pay $500 to get work transported to a show. I mean, and so I don't know. I haven't exhibited the last couple of years at all. I was sort of holding salons in my house and showing work privately, which was great until COVID hit. And I still won't have people here now. And I have to say, just recently, I have gotten to a place where I don't really think about exhibiting so much. I'm thinking a lot about making paintings. And if the right opportunity appears to show them, I'll show them. If a curator wants to, give me a show and I can get a grant to frame everything, great. About time. Pardon me?
You're not looking around.
I'm not, I would love to get, I think it's time to do another retrospective. It's been almost 20 years. So there's a lot of work that hasn't been shown or published. It's very different. I'd like to see it exposed. It's nice to have your work seen, but I just, and this must be an aging thing. I'm really more interested in getting the work done than thinking about having it shown. And maybe that's peculiar, but it's where I am right now.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve, you have another question?
Well, Woodmere really features local artists. Would that be a venue or not? Or do you have to have bigger, better connections?
No, Woodmere does. Their actual mandate as a museum is to feature local artists, and that director pretty much blew me off early on in his tenure and is really not interested in my work. So
Really?
I'm not going there. There are other places, and something will appear. So, John, you were raising your hand. But you have to unmute.
Yes, a couple of things. One, I have a question and I have a comment. I'll do the comment first. I love that you talked about the mimeographing, because I don't think people realize how important that little machine was in organizing all types of social justice things.
Absolutely.
And all types of community. Yeah, like people think about the Montgomery bus boycott, Joanne Robinson and her family, the Friday when Rosa Parks was arrested. They cranked out over 30,000 mimeograph sheets and plastered them all over Atlanta. So when that meeting happened, that Monday night that led to the bus boycott, everybody in Atlanta knew about it. And the church was overflowing. And it was the mimeograph machine. When I taught history and all that type of stuff, I talked about all the parts of history that go into community organizations that aren't in books, the songs, the types of signs that are done, the mimeograph machine and all that stuff. So it was, I loved it when you mentioned that.
Well, it actually, I think in some ways that's why West Miami Neighbors was more vibrant in those days, because we were putting out these newsletters. They were full of information. They were going all over the neighborhood, and we had all kinds of meetings all the time. A lot of the board meetings and the committee meetings happened in what's now my living room. And so there was a much more sort of activist they're active engagement.
Yeah, and when you're doing stuff with the mimeograph machine, you're going to people's houses.
That's right.
You are interacting with them. It's like it's literally door to door. It's literally grassroots at the at the most basic level. So thank you for mentioning that. And I wanted to ask you, I've been reading a lot about AI and the challenges it is presenting for artists, and how there are a couple of companies that have trying to patent some things for AI to produce art that uses things from other artists and all that. There's a big lawsuit that's happening against an artist who claims that his strokes and his work was being captured by AI and then used to not to represent it as his work, but produce work using his style and his stuff, and was questioning that. And I'm wondering what you see, if you thought about that, and what you see in the future of what the modern world and its its algorithms and all that, what that might do to either help or hurt art.
Wow. I use things like Photoshop and InDesign for production. So I do use some technology. But basically I'm really analog. I'm tactile. I like paper. I like paint. I like the feel of brushes in my hands. And I wonder about this stuff sometimes, the literal artificiality of it. I mean, you can take somebody's creative ideas and you can mishmash them into all kinds of things. And I wonder this a lot. I just went to the art museum last week and I went to visit my favorite painting, which is the Van der Weyden altar. And I remember the first time I saw Van der Weyden's work at the Prado, and I literally fell down on the floor and wept. Like, it was so shockingly beautiful. Even just thinking of it brings tears to my eyes. And it was painted in the 1400s. And I look at a lot of contemporary work, computer generated work, even new work that's not computer generated. And I think, is anybody going to care about this in 500 years? Like, is it gonna really grab somebody's heart in a couple hundred years? Now, we'll probably all be washed off the planet by then, so it may be irrelevant. I mean, I remember when I was in China and I got incredibly depressed because when I saw the devastation, the ecological devastation, and how bad things were, I thought, it doesn't matter how good an artist I am, because we're all going to be dead in 15 years. So, what posterity am I working for? But, and you probably know this as a musician, John, it's like original work. I mean, I think actually going forward, original work, handcrafted work, in-person music, I think those things are actually going to become more and more and more valuable because they will be more and more rare. And, if you aspire to work at a high level, that kind of aspiration, I mean, it kind of doesn't, this is for me, it doesn't like fit together with AI or with, I mean, I've composed pieces in Photoshop. I know how to do that, but they look plastic to me. They just don't feel, I don't know, it's not like a nourishing meal, So that's one woman's opinion.
Thanks. One of the things I love about doing festivals is that young kids get to see that music is done by actual, real, live people.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not streamed. It's not done, on video and all that type of stuff. And for me, those things have their places, but, music is a live thing. And there's something special about that. And, I've seen I went to an exhibit at the Met in New York. Used to be a Black community in part of Central Park. It was removed, and a group of people who called themselves Afrofuturists put some things together that metaphorically talk about what the transition and what would have happened had that community been around. And some things were done with video and all that type of stuff. And some things were just done with just simple pots and pans arranged in certain ways, tablecloths, and all that type of stuff. And that moved me personally much more than the video stuff. And the video was great. But what I take away, I went to there last year, what I take away from that is my memories of the arrangements of the flower vases, the arrangements of the tablecloths and all that type of stuff. And that's what really sticks with me. Okay, thank you. I would just, I know a number of artists, I'm asking them these questions, and most of them, have a response similar to yours. There's something about the actual act of doing it that makes it art, more than just you can look at it and see it, but the act of doing it. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think crafts is the same way. When you have a handmade mug or a handmade sweater, there's just the soul of the maker gets embedded in the thing. I like that. Anybody else, or do you want to get back to your whatever it is that you do? Yeah, Molly, did you want to? Somebody.
Well, actually, I have a follow-up question to John, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So, John, do you think have people tried to use AI to create jazz? Is that possible?
Years ago, there was a short story by Robert Heinlein about this guy who invented this machine that could listen to somebody play their music and come up with all the feelings and sensations behind it. And the trumpet player in the story, he had the inventor demonstrated it for him, and the trumpet player in the story heard it, and then he killed the inventor. And there are people who are attempting to do things like that. Where they'll take like a John Coltrane recording and then they'll mix it with something from somebody else, and it can try to make it seem like, this is what John Coltrane would have sounded like with Jimi Hendrix, if they had ever met or anything like that. And I find it intellectually interesting and incredibly boring.
Have you actually heard it? Have you actually heard it?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And and it could be just the fact that I'm aware that it's synthetically made. If I had no idea, if I just walked into a room and it was playing, I don't know how I would have reacted. But and there's something to be said for people trying anything with everything. I'm ADD. I'm a crazed musician, so I say try anything. But I still love the sense of actually doing the production of it and the feeling of it and the thinking of it, and there are things that can happen to me with something that is so overly dependent upon the technology. But and again, that's just how I see it. I'm old school. I'm an analog man in a digital world.
Yeah. Well, and also I think there's like so little time, and so you kind of have to go, okay, like I'm really interested in this one specific thing, and I don't have much time, and I don't want to spend my time learning about AI or this computer technology or whatever. I want to really dive more and more and more deeply into this tiny relationship I have with cotton rag paper and really great brushes. And, you know, just I don't know, it just it's deep and not broad. Yeah. Hi, Lucretia, what did you want to? You're muted, honey.
Oh, sorry. This has been so inspiring, Sarah. Thank you very much. And John, thank you. Very inspiring.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Nobody's fallen asleep yet, so that's good.
Oh,
No, it's too.
And everybody's
did you
still
wanna-
on.
Yeah, just real quick. I agree. So many fascinating tidbits, Sarah, even though I've known Sarah a long time. My quick question, if this is too personal, let us know. I'm wondering if you spend a lot of time alone painting, I assume, and I'm wondering if you get lonely, and if so, how do you listen to music or the radio or make phone calls? What do you do?
You know, I go through phases. There have been times where I'll listen to the radio, but not so much anymore. I do listen to music a lot. You know, there's a real difference for me between being lonely and being alone. And the solitude of creating has never bothered me, never. It's joyous. And actually, I mean, and I guess it's because I'm enough of an introvert, I actually don't like I don't even like somebody else in the building when I'm working. It's like I can feel their vibrations and it disturbs me in some way. I really have to be able to completely even disengage from any self-consciousness that I have. And, you know, in order to get into that really liminal space, I just need a lot of sort of psychic spaciousness, is what I would call it. During COVID, I have to say, I have observed in myself a lonesomeness that has surprised me. And partly it's because I've been incredibly cautious, but I've been very, very isolated. And, you know, I talk to people online and over Zoom, but it's, you know, and my phone or whatever, it's not the same. And I think it goes back to that artificiality of when you have contact with a person in person, you're getting lots more information than you're getting out of your computer screen. And I think that information is critical for humans, for our species, you know. So yeah, but the painting, making art, I've never had a problem with that. That does not feel lonely at all. Not at all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Anne, did you? I saw you.
I just wanted to remind, I think I heard you say once that you might put together some sort of course for beginning watercolorists.
Yeah, actually, that's so funny. I met with the new director of the Allen's Lane Art Center this week. She called me up, and she wants me to do some kind of course. And I said to her, you know, I am really a bad teacher, really a bad teacher, because I'm well, what can I say? I'm harsh, you know, like I am not interested in people's egos. I'm interested in how to make a good painting. And so I have to tell students, like, park it outside the door. When we do a critique, it's not personal. Don't take it personally. But I don't coddle people. I actually like teaching beginners because they don't have bad habits and I can save them a lot of time. But I also have been very, very slowly investing in some technology and trying to learn so that maybe I can teach online. I am a slow learner with technology, I'll tell you. It's hard for me.
Well, if you want to practice on a few beginners, we could probably round up a little neighborhood class.
Okay, well, I'll take you up on that. I will take you up on that. Yeah.
We'll try to be egoless, but I'm not guaranteeing.
Well, you know, that's on you, Anne. I can't, you know, I can't guarantee anything. It's never personal, but it can be
Fair,
hard to
duly
take.
warned. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Fun.
All right, y'all. Well, it's nice chatting with you, and guess we can all go have whatever it is we do next, popcorn or supper. Or...
Sarah,
Yes.
let me put up your email address again in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, because you did ask that everybody see it at least a couple times.
Yeah, please go to my website if you haven't already. Check it out. If you want to get on my mailing list, it's there. If you want to join my Patreon group, it's just Patreon. It's /Sara Steele. So it's really simple. Everything's always just my name. It's easy. And you can follow me on social media, but I'm a wreck on social media. I just have no dedication to posting enough.
Sarah, this has been really enlightening, enriching, and an inner interview with you. And again, as I said in the beginning, I say now we are privileged to be in the inside here, to actually not only listen to you, but to feel your love of art and your love of life. So it's been wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Sarah.
Thanks for sticking around.
You're welcome. Everybody have a great night, and we'll see each other around the neighborhood.
Yep.
Be
Take
well.
care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.